In this video, I'm going to explore performing under pressure. My name's Steve Ingham from Supporting Champions, and in this channel, I'm going to be exploring different strategies that can help human performance. So how can we perform when we're under pressure? We all feel pressure, whether that is the pressure for ourselves to perform or when we're supporting others to perform under pressure. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to explore the two aspects of performing under pressure, what you can do in the lead up that's going to ready you to perform under those circumstances. And secondly, so that you're able to perform actually in the moment. So what are the strategies that you can use? And I've got two key models. How can you get ready like a pro? And the 3 S's in the moment. So for the purposes of this video, what I'm considering here is pressure around a psychological stress associated with expectations to perform well in a situation, and that can be pressure that can be real or perceived, and that could come from internal or external sources. You might remember from a previous video, I'll put the link in the description below, is what is high performance? And that's performance of a given task to an exceptional level. And what's relevant to this discussion about pressure is performance of that task under significant or exceptional circumstance or demand. So just to set the scene, I'm just going to share with you this clip from my interview and discussion with Professor Kevin Dutton, Professor of Psychology at Oxford University, about why performing under pressure is becoming known as the thing that separates the best from the rest.
This is one of the things which my research, I think, has hopefully uncovered, and that is that if you read any general kind of sports psychology textbook, you open it up and you get the kind of general, okay, in order to succeed you need 2 things. Firstly, you need talent, and second, you need hard work. And that's true. Okay, so talent without hard work, you're not really going to get there. I think Steve Davis once said, "It's talent without hard work is an elegant way of finishing second." I think it was Steve Davis said that. And then hard work, without the talent, well, there's loads and loads and loads and loads of people who've got that. So if you put the two together, that's where you get success. But you just touched on it earlier. We both know people who have all the talent in the world, who have a really, really, really good hard work ethic, but still don't make it for various reasons. And that's where I came in and started looking at, you need a third thing. There's not 2 parts of jigsaw, there's 3. You need the talent, yes. You need the hard work, yes. But you need to be able to produce the talent when it matters. You can have hard work, you can have talent, but if you can't produce the talent when it matters and get the best out of yourself when it actually matters, then actually the talent and the hard work doesn't mean anything at all. So that's what I came in. I said, well, I think this is the third crucial component here. It's producing it when it actually matters. And I've spoken, this isn't just in sports, Steve, this is in all areas of life. So, a few friends in the entertainment business, and it's like, I'll give you an example, say humor and say performing on stage in a rock band as a guitarist. So, I was speaking to a friend of mine, who's a well-known comedian. He said, actually, you get people who you go into their local pub on a Friday night and they are the life and soul of the pub. They're making everybody laugh. And you think, how the hell aren't they a famous comedian? And he said, I'll tell you now, if I was to go into my local pub on a Friday night, I don't make anybody laugh. He said, I just don't. I'm not a very funny person in that particular kind of environment. He said, it's a really different skill set making a few close friends laugh and going on stage and making the London Palladium laugh. He said, it's a completely different skill set.
So before we get into this, have a think about a time when you really felt a level of pressure, something that you do routinely, maybe you get nervous, but you felt a much higher level of pressure. So for me, for example, I do a lot of speaking. I'll do public speaking and probably speak most weeks, and I'll tend to get nervous beforehand. But if I think about speaking in front of a business or a sport or an institute, whatever it might be, if I compare that to the pressure that I felt for doing a best man speech, where I feel the responsibility and the pressure of doing a good job for a dear friend, somebody that I'm really close to, then there's a much higher level of expectation that I feel, but also that's attached to that type of speech. For example, you've got to try and be a bit funny, you've trying to create an atmosphere and a warmth to the speech too. Another example would be speaking at a school at an awards do, but particularly in front of my children, in front of my own children, who, if I'm stood up there, then there's dad on stage. And under those circumstances, I'm feeling a level of pressure that where I want them to feel proud. So when it comes to feeling that pressure and that stress, a lot of that's internally generated. In that example of speaking, I'll want to do well for the people that I'm responsible for or that I've got an attachment to. But there's an external expectation, an external hope and a pressure that I'll feel too. So let's start with getting ready to perform. And my model for you is how to get ready like a pro. So PRO. And the P is to prepare. And this might sound blindingly obvious. However, I've got a particular spin on this for you. But also, we've also got to recognise that a lot of people will just sort of block out the preparation aspect. They almost feel inhibited. They don't necessarily want to tackle and deal with what's coming up. And so actually committing to preparing is ensuring that you're ready. So let me draw on an example from Mandy Hickson, who's a jet fighter pilot. And here she shares an example about how they almost over-prepare for performance. I just want to pick up on this idea of overload. We again picked up this phrase in high-performance sport about hard training, easy combat, or easy training, hard combat. But specifically, that's a life or death situation. You do that to protect yourself. It sounded as though there was almost a bit of a mountain to climb where you had to overcome that overload in order to pass the various tests you were put in front of. But ultimately, that was preparing you for combat, which is, like you say, you've got the full game plan in place there. In terms of preparing you for that overload period, what's the process of going through that? Because handling that pressure is critical in terms of developing that skill set.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why they make advanced flying training so difficult. We did lose quite a few people from the courses, at each of the stages as well. So when I got to fly the Tornado, I almost thought, oh, it's quite easy in comparison, because I've got someone now sitting in the back seat, because we had a navigator and they became then known as a weapon systems operator. So you're part of a team now. And actually, that's not an instructor in the back that's trying to catch you out to overload you. They are there to assist for you to work well as a team together. And that was quite exciting. And then we also had a head-up display, which suddenly I've got a lot of green writing, which is telling me all the information I need in front of me. I'm not looking down at a load of instruments. I've also now got a moving map, which is telling me where I am in the world. So I'm not having to know and keep this huge amounts of situational awareness going. So when you got to fly the Tornado or your frontline jet, it was much easier in many ways than advanced flying training. But of course, now you're going to take that jet. You've learned how to fly it, then you learn how to fight it.
So the key phrase there that I discussed with Mandy was easy training, hard combat, or hard training, easy combat. And this gives an athlete a sense of feeling over-prepared. You can go in sort of sensing, well, you know what, I've done everything that I can that's in my power to get ready for the competition. In fact, I think that this goes deeper than us just readying somebody to perform. I actually think that for those people who are supporting others to perform under pressure, just to make things nice and safe and comfortable in the lead up to competition, is probably unethical. We do need to make sure that we are toughening people for performance so that when they get there, actually it feels almost a level down. I think that is an ethical aspect of preparing to perform under that pressure, because the alternative is that people who go in to perform and they feel the pressure and they get overwhelmed, they get stressed, and that doesn't feel good. Their performance can start to crumble in front of them. And so I think that we have a responsibility to ready people for the pressure in an appropriate manner. Okay, so that's the P, to prepare or over-prepare, if you like. And the R is to remind. So remind yourself of the progress that you have made. it's often too easy for us to look at the next level and just think, oh, that's out of my grasp. I'm not sure I can make it, or I don't know how that's going to go. But actually, if you look back at the progress that you've made, then that can really boost your confidence. The late, great Albert Bandura introduced this concept of self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is about the personal judgment of how well you think you might go given a certain situation. And one of the key factors that Bandura recognized around self-efficacy was the experience of mastery. And if you specifically relate to the successes and the progress that you make, then your self-efficacy will be boosted. If you think about your failures and your mistakes, then your self-efficacy can go down. Erik Erikson said this: children cannot be fooled by empty praise and condescending encouragement. They may have to accept artificial bolstering of their self-esteem in lieu of something better, but what I call their accruing ego identity gains real strength only from wholehearted and consistent recognition of real accomplishments. So if you've got stress and worry that's coming up and you're not sure you can take that next step, take an opportunity to remind yourself of what's got you to where you are. So for a climber, that would be thinking about the final base camp and thinking whether they can get to the peak and worrying about that last bit, but actually taking an opportunity to look back at the progress that they've made, the height that they've ascended. And that's probably the best evidence that they can take that next step. Okay, so the next one is O, and that's about opportunity. So we are hardwired to think about the risks and the rewards of a given situation. We don't want to be lunch, but we also need to get our lunch. And so when we're leading into a big competition, sometimes it's easy for us to have a tendency to be thinking about what could go wrong, what could the mistakes be, and the failures that potentially could happen. And actually what we need to be thinking about much more is the opportunity that's in front of us. In this conversation I had with Sir Matthew Pinsent, 4-time Olympic gold medalist, of what it feels like on the start line in the moments just before you actually go and race. And he talked a lot about actually wanting to sort of get out of there. But he had a way of reframing so that he was sensing the opportunity that's ahead. Matt, I remember I think it was in your autobiography, you wrote about the nerves and the cacophony that kind of happens before a race, when actually you probably, I think there was something about the phrasing of, if there was a chance just to go and step out and no one knows and no one questions it, I'd probably take it when it gets that noisy. That's very different from what you've just played in terms of just switching off and thinking objectively about whether it's going to work or not.
When it came to the crunch of a final, my sort of, redoubt, my core was, I just want to go out there and show how good we can be. That was the impetus, was you can sort of hunker down and crawl into a ball in the fetal position and it'll all go away. But actually, what's the point of that? Because you've just trained for 4 years straight in order to put yourself in this position. And the logic goes, it's an awfully long way round to get back to this position again. These only come along once every 4 years. So if you're not going to go out there now and do something you're proud of, you might go out there and do something you regret. And if the regret is going to fuel the next 4 years in order to get back to this position, that's a really unfortunate and long-winded cycle. So actually get yourself on the front foot and say, I'm going to go out there and give it absolutely everything, because I want to prove how good we can be. I know how good we are.
There's some interesting research in this area, and we can look at organizational psychology that can help us understand that we get to choose how we develop our mindset when it comes to thinking about a demanding situation. Anne Casper of the University of Mannheim did a series of studies where she took numerous employees, over 170 employees in various different occupations and industries across education, health and social care and IT, And what she did was she asked them to fill in diaries of how they were thinking morning, noon and night about an upcoming extensive workload. And so what she noticed was that if people adopted proactive, constructive behaviours such as planning, scheduling and seeing the upcoming workload as a challenge, as a learning opportunity, then they were able to increase their performance and feel more energized from the actual work, rather than thinking, oh no, I'm worried and I'm concerned, taking a negative mindset and it feeling more energy draining and a lower performance. So we get to choose about whether we think about the opportunity ahead or whether we're worried about the risks. You need to choose the opportunity. Okay, so now let's think about in the moment. What is it that you can do in the moment that can actually help you to perform under pressure, to be at your best when the heat comes on? So my model for this is the 3 S's. The first one is to survey the situation. So this is about sort of getting a clean, objective assessment of the situation. The questions that you might want to ask are, what objective observations can I make about the situation? Is the response, is the situation normal? Is it credible? And what are the emotions that I'm experiencing? So that almost externalizes those emotions. So you're sort of seeing them for what they really are. Is the incident normal? Could the situation have been anticipated? And so in this situation, for example, if something kicks off, if something is almost unexpected, then surveying the situation can allow you to think, well, is this normal? Is this what I would normally expect? And often it is. And so just simply asking that question means that you go, okay, this is what I expect in the heat of battle. Or if it's not, then you can recognize that it's an unusual circumstance. So surveying the situation is all about sort of stepping out of the situation so that you can see it cleanly for what it is. The second S is steadying your performance. And so we know that actually a level of physiological arousal can actually enhance performance. So this is how a stress response works. So you will experience some sort of sensory input. You'll register that on the prefrontal cortex. That will then be picked up at the limbic system, your brain, your hindbrain, your emotive brain will wake up, and that will trigger the hypothalamus. That will send a particular hormone called the adrenocorticotrophic hormone that will wake up the adrenals, which is just above your kidneys, and that will prompt the release in adrenaline. Adrenaline circulating in the blood will increase heart rate, it will constrict blood vessels, it will cause your breathing to change, becomes more shallow and faster. That will, I'll keep this clean, it will increase gut motility. One of the only obvious external signs is a change in the pupils size. So you'll have a constriction of the pupils. You'll have a sweat-based response, maybe not as weird as that picture. And you'll have a response on the skin. If the stress is really felt, then you'll have something called piloerection. Keeping it clean, please. Piloerection, so that's hair raising. And so the hairs on the back of your neck and on your arms will raise. And that's actually a vestigial evolutionary response. And so that relates to actually puffing up when we're actually much more hairy. The puffing up, making ourselves look bigger. And that's a stress-based response. And so that will relate to the 3 major stress-based responses: fight, flight, and freeze. And so fight is that you perhaps want to get lunch or that you want to avoid being lunch. Flight is just thinking, no, they look bigger than me, I'm going to get out of there. And freeze, which is often recognised in airline disasters where actually people could get out. They survive a crash, but they freeze in their seats and that causes a casualty. So the stress-based response that I've just shared with you, that's awakening of the autonomic nervous system and specifically the sympathetic nervous system, this adrenaline-based stressed response. And so we can't necessarily visualize and control how our gut responds. We can't necessarily control the constriction of blood vessels. But one of the things that we can control is our breath. And so the shallow, light breathing, frequent breathing is something you can gain control over. And it is probably the strongest way in which you can steady your performance. And so that it means that stress-based arousal that a lot of people experience in competition, it doesn't tip over to becoming sort of catastrophic and actually causing a reduction in performance. You want to get it in that sweet spot of I'm aroused and ready to perform, but I'm not overly psyched by the situation. Just taking 3 to 4 deep breaths from the diaphragm, so basic breathing, in for 3 to 4 seconds and out for 5 to 6 seconds, and doing that 3 to 4 times, and that simply gets control. That controls the sympathetic nervous system response and steadies the hormones. If you do that, and if you monitor your heart rate whilst you're doing that exercise, you'll see that your heart rate can come down. And so that is gaining control. You'll often see athletes doing that in the moment, taking a big breath in and controlling the situation, controlling their nerves. So let's link back to self-efficacy, because Albert Bandura recognized that physiological stress or status just before a performance can take you in a negative and a positive direction. So you can think, oh, I'm nervous, oh dear, I'm worried now. Or you can think, I'm nervous, that must mean I'm ready to perform. And so you can boost self-efficacy by recognizing that nerves are a good thing. So that was steady, and before that we had survey the situation. Let's lead on to our final S. Before I get into what that is, let's hear a clip from England football captain Steph Houghton illustrating this in action. And how are you under that sort of spotlight of pressure? If we spoke to you like the minutes before a match or even at half time, what would be the difference between this and the conversation that we're having now?
I think when the pressure comes, I think I like just to kind of revert back to type and revert back to the basics, which is, can we run? Are we running hard enough? Are we playing the simple passes? Are we doing the basics well? And maybe because that's the type of player that I am and the position that I am, I think if you nail them, then you give yourself half a chance.
So our final S is to simplify. So what Steph was illustrating there was just going back to basics, going back to what you know, rather than just adding more and more information and more things you've got to worry about. Let's do the basics really, really well. So whether it's something you visualize through imagery or to embody, or if it's a simple mantra that you're able to repeat to yourself, or something that you're drawing your attention to, keeping it simple means that I don't have to worry about anything else other than just that in order to perform under the pressure. So I hope you can use some of the strategies that I've shared with you today that can help you turn pressure into a bit of fuel to allow you to perform under that exceptional circumstance, so you can take the opportunities in front of you. Thanks for watching.